Hello, everyone, and welcome back to TalkMaster English Channel, the place where we learn English together slowly, naturally, and comfortably, like having a warm conversation with close friends after a long and tiring day. And today, we are very happy because we will spend meaningful time together again through simple English conversations that can slowly improve both your English skills and your confidence.
Hi everyone, I'm Tom, and before we begin today's episode, I just want to say that if you are listening right now while feeling shy, nervous, tired, or even disappointed about your English level, please do not worry too much, because many learners around the world feel exactly the same way, and you are definitely not alone in this journey.
Yes, that is very true, because sometimes people look at fluent English speakers online and suddenly feel small, weak, or discouraged, and they begin thinking things like, why is my English still so slow? Or why do I keep making simple mistakes even after studying for a long time? And little by little, those negative thoughts start affecting your confidence.
And when negative thoughts become stronger, even very simple English conversations can suddenly feel difficult, stressful, and uncomfortable because fear starts controlling your mind before you even open your mouth to speak.
But today, we want to talk about something very important and very powerful, something that many learners forget while studying grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation every day. And that important thing is your mindset, because the way you think about yourself can completely change the way you learn and speak English.
Exactly, because when you begin thinking more positively, your heart slowly becomes calmer, your mind becomes more relaxed, and speaking English starts feeling more natural and less frightening, even if your sentences are still simple and imperfect.
And honestly, this is something I learned from my own personal experience, because there were many times when I felt embarrassed after making mistakes, and there were also days when I wanted to stop practicing completely because I thought my English was not improving fast enough.
I think many listeners will understand that feeling deeply because language learning can sometimes feel very emotional, especially when you compare yourself to people who speak confidently and smoothly.
Yes, but later I slowly realized something very important, and that realization changed my mindset completely, because I understood that confident English speakers are not confident because they never make mistakes. They're confident because they continue speaking even after making mistakes.
That is such an important lesson because courage does not mean speaking perfectly without fear. Courage means speaking even while feeling nervous and uncomfortable inside.
And sometimes one small positive experience can slowly change your whole attitude toward English learning, like having a simple conversation at a coffee shop, asking someone for directions, or successfully understanding one sentence that felt difficult before.
Those moments may look very small from the outside, but inside your heart, they can feel very powerful and emotional because they remind you that your English is slowly becoming useful in real life.
So today, through this long and relaxed conversation, we want to share stories, funny mistakes, emotional moments, and real-life situations that many beginners can connect with naturally. And we hope this episode makes you feel more comfortable, more motivated, and more confident about speaking English every day.
And please remember something important while listening today. You do not need advanced vocabulary, complicated grammar, or a perfect accent to communicate meaningfully with people, because simple English spoken with confidence and kindness is already very powerful.
Yes, and if you make mistakes while practicing English, please do not hate yourself or feel ashamed, because mistakes are not signs of failure. They're actually signs that you are learning, growing, and bravely trying something new.
In fact, many funny mistakes later become beautiful memories that help you remember English better and also help you become more relaxed during conversations.
So, before we begin today's story, we want you to take a deep breath slowly. Relax your shoulders and stop worrying about being perfect for a moment. Because this podcast is not about perfection, it's about growth, confidence, communication, and enjoying the learning journey step by step.
And maybe after listening today, you will feel a little stronger, a little calmer, and a little more willing to speak English tomorrow, even if your voice still shakes a little when you begin.
Because every strong English speaker once started with small and simple sentences just like you.
And every confident voice was once quiet and afraid.
But they continued practicing little by little every day.
And you can do the same.
So let's begin today's story together, slowly and comfortably, here on Empower English Channel. Tom, can I tell you something honestly before we continue today's conversation? Because I think many listeners may secretly feel the same way, even if they never say it out loud to anyone around them.
Of course, Emily, you can always speak honestly here, because honest conversations are usually the most meaningful and the most helpful for people who are learning and struggling quietly by themselves every day.
This morning, before recording this podcast, I suddenly felt very tired emotionally. And for a few minutes, I even thought about stopping my English practice for the day because my confidence became very low after making several simple mistakes while speaking alone in my room.
That feeling is actually much more common than people realize, because sometimes language learners become mentally exhausted from trying so hard every single day, while still feeling like their progress is slow and invisible.
Yes, exactly. Because when I opened social media this morning, I saw many videos of people speaking English so fluently, so confidently, and so naturally, and suddenly my mind started comparing myself to them in a very negative way.
Yes, exactly. Because when I opened social media this morning, I saw many videos of people speaking English so fluently, so confidently, and so naturally, and suddenly my mind started comparing myself to them in a very negative way.
Comparison can become very dangerous when we forget that everyone has a different learning journey, different life experiences, and different amounts of practice and confidence.
That is true, but at that moment I was not thinking calmly, and I started asking myself questions like, why is my English still simple after all this time? And why do I still become nervous before speaking even easy sentences?
And when those thoughts start growing inside your mind, even small mistakes can suddenly feel much bigger and much more painful than they really are.
Yes, and then I tried practicing English by myself in front of the mirror, but I accidentally made several grammar mistakes, and instead of laughing or staying relaxed, I became frustrated and disappointed with myself.
What kind of mistakes were bothering you so much this morning?
Very small mistakes, actually, but because my mood was already negative, those small mistakes felt very serious inside my head, and I remember accidentally saying, "Yesterday I am going to the market," instead of "Yesterday I went to the market."
Honestly, that is a very normal beginner mistake, and many learners make similar mistakes while speaking naturally and quickly.
I know that now, but at that moment I suddenly felt embarrassed even though nobody else was listening to me, and I remember looking at myself in the mirror and quietly thinking, maybe my English will never become good.
That sentence right there is actually much more dangerous than the grammar mistake itself, because negative thinking can slowly destroy confidence if we repeat those thoughts too often in our minds.
Yes, and after feeling frustrated for almost 30 minutes, I decided to leave my apartment and take a short walk outside because I needed fresh air and a calmer mind.
Sometimes stepping outside can completely change your emotional energy and help your thoughts become clearer and softer again.
While walking slowly through the neighborhood, I noticed a small bakery that recently opened near my apartment, and suddenly I thought maybe I should challenge myself by ordering something in English instead of staying trapped inside negative thoughts.
That was actually a very brave and healthy decision, because confidence usually grows through small actions, not through waiting for perfect feelings.
At first, I still felt nervous before entering the bakery because there were several customers inside, and I worried that people might hear my mistakes if I spoke English incorrectly.
That fear is very normal, especially for beginners who care deeply about sounding correct and natural during conversations.
But then I remembered something important that we often tell our listeners, which is that simple communication is more important than perfect communication. And slowly that thought helped me calm down a little.
Positive self-talk can completely change the energy inside your mind before speaking.
Yes, so I walked to the counter, smiled politely at the worker, and said slowly, "Hello, can I please have 1 hot coffee and 2 cheese breads?" And thankfully, the worker understood me immediately and smiled very kindly.
See, sometimes the conversation becomes much easier than the scary version we imagined inside our heads before speaking.
Exactly. And honestly, that one small successful sentence already made my heart feel lighter and more confident, because suddenly I realized that my English was actually useful in real life, even if it was still simple.
That realization is very powerful for language learners because using English successfully in real situations creates emotional confidence, not just textbook knowledge.
Oh, I can already feel an embarrassing story coming.
I wanted to compliment the bakery by saying, "Your bread smells very good," but because I became nervous again, I accidentally said, "Your bread smells very strange today."
Oh no, poor bakery owner. That sounds like an accidental insult instead of a compliment.
I know, and the worker looked confused for 1 second while I suddenly realized my mistake and started panicking internally.
What did you do after that?
I quickly started waving my hands and said, "No, not strange bad, strange good. I mean, very delicious smell." And honestly, my explanation probably sounded even more confusing than the original mistake.
But sometimes those awkward moments become the funniest and warmest parts of real communication.
Surprisingly, instead of becoming uncomfortable, the worker started laughing kindly, and then I laughed too. And suddenly, the entire situation felt warm, relaxed, and human instead of embarrassing.
That moment is actually a perfect example of how positive energy can completely change a conversation, even after making mistakes.
Yes, because if I had become too embarrassed and silent, I probably would have left the bakery feeling ashamed and discouraged again.
But instead, you stayed calm enough to continue communicating naturally.
And after leaving the bakery with my coffee and bread, I realized something very important while walking home slowly under the morning sunlight.
What realization did you have?
I realized that my English becomes much stronger when my mindset becomes kinder and calmer, because fear and negative thinking were actually making communication harder than it needed to be.
That is such an important lesson for beginners, because sometimes the biggest problem is not vocabulary or grammar, but fear, pressure, and self-criticism.
Yes, and from that moment, I decided I want to practice English differently from now on, with more patience, more positive thinking, and less emotional pressure on myself every single day.
That sounds like the beginning of a much healthier and happier English journey.
And honestly, I already feel lighter just thinking that way.
Because positivity gives your mind room to breathe and grow naturally.
Dear listeners, if you also feel frustrated sometimes, please remember that one difficult morning does not mean you are failing, and one mistake does not mean you are bad at English.
Sometimes progress is happening quietly inside you, even when you cannot clearly see it yet.
So please continue speaking, continue practicing, and continue believing that your English can improve little by little every day.
Emily, after hearing your bakery story this morning, I suddenly remembered one of the most embarrassing restaurant experiences of my entire life. And honestly, even now, when I think about it carefully, I still feel half embarrassed and half amused at the same time.
Oh, this already sounds interesting because usually when you say embarrassing, it means the story will become both funny and educational for our listeners.
Unfortunately for me, yes, because my embarrassing moments always become public learning experiences somehow.
That is actually very useful for beginners because funny mistakes help people understand that making errors is completely normal during language learning.
Well, in that case, I will bravely sacrifice my dignity for education today.
Thank you for your brave service, Tom. Now please tell us what happened at the restaurant.
A few months ago, I met an old friend from university, and we decided to eat dinner together at a small international restaurant near the train station because the place was famous for welcoming many foreign travelers and English-speaking customers.
That already sounds like a place where you would naturally want to practice English more confidently.
Exactly. And honestly, before entering the restaurant, I told myself very proudly, today I will speak English naturally and confidently like an advanced speaker.
Sometimes confidence before speaking becomes slightly dangerous.
Very dangerous in my case, because I focused too much on sounding impressive instead of simply communicating clearly and calmly.
I think many learners do that sometimes, especially when they suddenly want to sound fluent very quickly.
Yes, and because of that unnecessary pressure, my brain became nervous even before the waiter arrived at our table.
That is interesting because sometimes trying too hard actually creates more mistakes instead of fewer mistakes.
Exactly. And when the waiter finally came over and politely asked, "Are you ready to order?" my confidence suddenly disappeared like smoke in the wind.
Oh no, that moment when your brain suddenly forgets every English word you studied for years.
Exactly that moment, because I looked at the menu, panicked internally, and somehow all the food vocabulary inside my head became mixed together in complete confusion.
What were you trying to order originally?
Honestly, my order was very simple because I only wanted grilled chicken, vegetable soup, and a glass of orange juice.
That sounds easy enough for a normal, peaceful conversation.
Yes, but instead of speaking slowly and clearly, I became nervous and tried speaking too quickly because I wanted to look confident in front of my friend.
And I can already feel disaster approaching.
Complete disaster, because instead of saying my order correctly, I accidentally said something like, "I want hot chicken water with green things and orange drinking."
Tom, that sounds less like restaurant English and more like survival communication during an emergency situation.
Exactly, and the worst part was the waiter's face, because he looked confused but also deeply concerned about what kind of strange meal I was requesting.
Honestly, I would also be confused if someone asked for orange drinking at a restaurant.
My friend sitting beside me immediately started laughing so hard that he almost dropped his spoon onto the floor.
Oh no, that must have made you feel even more embarrassed inside.
Very embarrassed, because suddenly all the people around us felt louder, the restaurant felt hotter, and I became painfully aware of my own existence.
That emotional feeling is actually very real for many English learners after making public mistakes.
Yes, and for a few seconds I honestly wanted to disappear completely instead of continuing the conversation.
But thankfully, you survived somehow, because you are here telling the story now.
Barely survived, but yes, then something important happened that slowly changed the entire situation.
What happened?
Instead of panicking more, I suddenly remembered something very simple but powerful that my English teacher once told me many years ago.
What advice did your teacher give you?
She said, "When you feel nervous, stop trying to sound impressive and start trying to sound clear."
Wow, that is actually very smart advice for language learners.
Yes, so I took a small breath, smiled awkwardly, and started again slowly using much simpler English.
What did you say the second time?
I pointed gently at the menu and said slowly, "Sorry, I would like grilled chicken, vegetable soup, and orange juice, please."
That sounds calm, clear, polite, and very easy to understand.
Exactly, and immediately the waiter smiled with relief and wrote everything correctly without any confusion.
Which proves that simple English often works better than complicated English when you are nervous.
Absolutely, because communication became successful the moment I stopped trying to sound perfect.
That is such an important lesson for beginners who put too much pressure on themselves while speaking.
And honestly, after the waiter left, my friend told me something that I still remember very clearly today.
What did he say?
He smiled and said, "Your English mistake was funny, but your courage to continue speaking was actually impressive."
Ah, that is honestly a very kind and meaningful thing to say.
Yes, because at that moment, I realized people usually respect effort much more than perfection.
That is very true, because when someone tries speaking another language, most people understand that mistakes are natural and unavoidable.
Exactly. And after relaxing a little more during dinner, I started enjoying the conversation instead of worrying constantly about grammar and pronunciation mistakes.
That mental shift probably made speaking feel much easier and more natural afterward.
It really did. And later, another funny thing happened while we were eating dessert together.
There's more embarrassment coming?
Unfortunately, yes, because when the waiter asked if the food tasted good, I wanted to say everything tastes amazing, but instead I accidentally said everything tastes dangerous.
Dangerous dessert sounds like a very exciting restaurant experience.
Honestly, at that point, even I started laughing immediately instead of feeling embarrassed anymore.
Which actually shows huge emotional growth compared to before.
Exactly, because in the past, I would probably think about that mistake for 3 days and feel ashamed every time I remembered it.
But now?
Now, I understand that funny mistakes are part of becoming a stronger and more relaxed speaker.
And also, those emotional moments help your brain remember vocabulary more clearly later.
Yes, because after saying dangerous instead of amazing, I promise you I will never confuse those words again in my entire life.
Sometimes embarrassment becomes the best teacher.
Very true. And honestly, that restaurant experience changed something important inside me emotionally.
In what way?
I stopped believing that confident speakers are people who never make mistakes. And I started understanding that confident speakers are simply people who continue talking even after mistakes happen.
That mindset change is incredibly important for long-term language growth.
Yes, because perfection creates pressure, but positive thinking creates freedom.
I really love that sentence.
Thank you, because honestly, I learned it through many uncomfortable and awkward experiences.
Dear listeners, if you ever experience embarrassing moments while speaking English in restaurants, coffee shops, schools, or public places, please do not decide to become silent forever afterward.
Instead, try smiling gently, relaxing your shoulders, correcting yourself slowly if necessary, and continuing the conversation naturally without hating yourself for small mistakes.
Because one embarrassing moment cannot destroy your English journey.
But one positive reaction after a mistake can completely change your confidence for the future.
And remember, most people will forget your grammar mistakes very quickly, but they will remember your kindness, effort, and positive energy much longer.
So, please keep speaking bravely, even if your voice shakes a little sometimes, because courage grows stronger every single time you continue instead of giving up.
Tom, after listening to your restaurant story carefully, I suddenly remembered a very special moment from my own life. And honestly, I think it was one of the first times I truly understood how powerful simple English conversations can become in real life, even when your vocabulary is still limited and your confidence is still growing slowly day by day.
That already sounds like an emotional story because sometimes the smallest conversations unexpectedly become the moments we remember for many years afterward.
Yes, exactly, because this situation looked very small and ordinary from the outside, but emotionally it changed something important deep inside my heart and also changed the way I looked at my English learning journey afterward. Now I am very curious, so please tell us what happened. About 2 years ago, I was traveling alone by train to visit my aunt in another city, and honestly, at that time, my English confidence was still very weak because I was afraid of speaking incorrectly in front of strangers.
Traveling alone already requires confidence, especially when communication problems suddenly happen unexpectedly.
Yes, and unfortunately, something confusing happened at the station because my train schedule suddenly changed and many people around me started moving quickly toward different platforms while announcements were playing loudly through the speakers.
That sounds stressful even in your native language, so in English it must have felt even more overwhelming emotionally.
Exactly, and while I was standing there feeling confused and nervous, I noticed an older foreign woman nearby who also looked completely lost and worried while holding several heavy bags in her hands.
So both of you were confused at the same time?
Yes, and at first I only looked at her quietly for a few seconds because inside my mind I was thinking, I want to help her, but my English is probably too weak.
That negative self-doubt appears very quickly sometimes, especially during unexpected real-life situations.
Yes, but then I noticed something on her face that touched my heart emotionally because she looked tired, stressed, and almost helpless while trying to understand the station signs around her.
That must have made you want to help even stronger.
It really did. And suddenly I stopped thinking too much about grammar and perfection because I realized that helping another human being was more important than sounding like a perfect English speaker.
That is such a beautiful mindset change.
So, slowly and nervously, I walked toward her, smiled gently, and said in very simple English, "Excuse me, do you need help finding your train?"
That sentence may sound simple, but emotionally it was probably a very brave moment for you.
Honestly, my heart was beating so fast while speaking that sentence because I was afraid she might not understand me or might reply too quickly for me to follow.
But you still spoke anyway, and that is real courage.
Yes, and thankfully, she immediately smiled with visible relief and answered slowly, "Yes, thank you very much. I think I am lost."
That response alone probably made you feel more comfortable already.
It really did, because suddenly the conversation felt warm and natural instead of scary and stressful like I imagined before speaking.
So what happened after that?
We started checking the train information board together, and even though my English was still simple, we communicated little by little using short sentences, gestures, smiles, and patient listening.
Which proves that communication is much bigger than perfect grammar alone.
Exactly. And after several minutes, we finally found the correct train platform she needed. And honestly, when she smiled gratefully and thanked me sincerely, I suddenly felt something emotional inside my chest.
What did you feel at that moment?
I felt useful, capable, and strangely proud of myself for the first time in a long time regarding my English ability.
That emotional feeling is extremely important for language learners because confidence grows strongly when English becomes connected to meaningful real-life experiences.
Yes, because before that moment, English felt like only textbooks, grammar exercises, and stressful studying. But after helping that woman, English suddenly became something human, warm, and alive.
That is honestly one of the most beautiful parts of language learning.
And something else happened afterward that surprised me even more.
What happened?
After helping her successfully, I noticed my fear of speaking English became much smaller than before because I finally understood that simple English could still create meaningful communication and real human connection.
That realization can completely transform someone's mindset permanently.
Yes, because before that experience, I kept waiting for perfect English before speaking confidently. But afterward, I realized confidence actually grows through imperfect action and real conversations.
Exactly. Confidence usually comes after speaking, not before speaking.
And honestly, from that day onward, I slowly started speaking more English in daily life, little by little, without overthinking every single mistake.
That sounds like the beginning of a much freer and healthier learning journey emotionally.
It really was, because instead of constantly asking myself, what if I make mistakes, I started asking myself, what meaningful connection might happen if I try speaking? Wow, that is actually a very powerful change in perspective. And you know something interesting?
What?
My English improved much faster after I stopped fearing mistakes so deeply every single day.
That makes complete sense, because a relaxed mind learns much more naturally than a fearful mind filled with pressure and self-criticism.
Yes, and now whenever I meet beginners who feel shy and discouraged, I always want to tell them something important from my own experience.
What message do you want to tell them?
I want to tell them that simple English is already valuable because even basic sentences can help people create friendships, solve problems, and change your confidence little by little over time.
That is such an encouraging message for people who feel their English is still too weak or too simple.
Because honestly, many learners underestimate themselves too much without realizing how much progress they already made quietly over time.
And sometimes they only notice their mistakes while completely ignoring their growth.
Exactly. And that habit creates unnecessary sadness and pressure during learning.
Dear listeners, if you are listening right now while feeling insecure about your English level, please remember that communication does not begin with perfection.
It begins with courage, kindness, patience, and the willingness to try, even while feeling nervous.
And one small conversation today may become the beginning of a completely different future tomorrow.
So please do not stay silent forever because of fear.
Your voice deserves to be heard too.
Even simple English spoken sincerely can become something beautiful and meaningful in another person's life.
As we slowly reach the end of today's episode together, I want everyone listening right now to pause quietly for a moment and think about how far you have already come in your English journey, even if your progress sometimes feels small or invisible to you personally.
Yes, because many learners become so focused on their mistakes, weaknesses, and imperfections that they completely forget to notice their own growth, courage, and effort that has slowly been building little by little every single day.
Maybe 1 year ago, you were too afraid to say even one English sentence aloud, but today you are listening to long English conversations and understanding much more than before.
Maybe you still make grammar mistakes sometimes. Maybe your pronunciation is not perfect yet, and maybe you still feel nervous during conversations. But please remember that improvement does not happen suddenly in one magical moment.
Real improvement happens quietly through small daily actions, small conversations, small mistakes, and small moments of courage repeated again and again over time.
And honestly, we truly believe that positive thinking can completely change not only your English learning journey, but also the way you see yourself as a person.
Because when you stop attacking yourself emotionally after every mistake, your mind becomes calmer, your heart becomes lighter, and speaking English slowly becomes less painful and more enjoyable.
Learning a language should not feel like punishing yourself every day. It should feel like slowly opening a new door in your life, step by step, conversation by conversation, experience by experience.
So from today onward, please try speaking to yourself more kindly whenever you practice English.
Instead of saying, "My English is terrible," maybe say, "My English is improving slowly every day."
Instead of saying, "I am too shy to speak," maybe say, "I am becoming braver little by little."
Those small changes in mindset may look simple, but emotionally, they can create very powerful changes inside your confidence and motivation over time.
And please remember something very important before we say goodbye today.
Your value as a person is not decided by grammar mistakes, vocabulary size, or pronunciation perfection.
You are already worthy of communication, friendship, growth, and connection exactly as you are right now.
So continue practicing patiently.
Continue speaking bravely.
Continue smiling after mistakes instead of hating yourself for them.
And continue believing that your English can grow stronger step by step, even during difficult days when progress feels slow.
Because honestly, every confident English speaker you admire today once felt nervous, embarrassed, confused, and afraid too.
The difference is simply that they continued practicing instead of giving up completely.
And we truly believe you can continue too.
Thank you so much for spending this time together with us today here on TalkMaster English Channel.
We are genuinely happy and grateful that you chose to learn English together with us through these simple conversations and emotional stories.
We hope today's episode gave you not only English practice, but also comfort, encouragement, warmth, and motivation for your daily life.
And whenever you feel discouraged again in the future, please remember the simple message clearly inside your heart.
Think positive.
Speak better English every day.
Slowly.
Naturally.
Patiently.
And confidently.
Goodbye, everyone, and please continue believing in yourself, even on difficult days.
We will see you again very soon in the next episode with more stories, more conversations, more laughter, and more growth together.
Until then, stay healthy, stay hopeful, and keep speaking English little by little every single day.
Bye, everyone.
See you soon.